you cannot hear me, please refer to um, the box instead of the Q&A. Um, or so it's Joanne, if you can. Okay, good. If for Joanne, could you I'll contact. I guess I'll deal with Joanne with typing. Send her a message through chat right now, but everyone can hear me. Awesome. Okay, so let me introduce our facilitator today. Um, because this is our friend, we have him facilitate our webinars before. Let me introduce Henry Wei. Henry Wei has 30 years of experience leading training, development programs, and deliver direct service in areas such as employee counseling, housing, volunteer management, literacy, co-ops, adult education, and social enterprise. Henry has a certificate trainer with Center for Nonviolence Communications, and his website is www.cnvc.org since 2004. Henry facilitates public training on the compassionate communications process and work with organizations as well. Some of his clients include the Ernestine Center, Center Victim of Torture, Dixie and Blue Conflicts Resolution Center, Abundant Water International, Hawk Mental Health Association, Intention for Peace, Six Community Center of Poverty, CUPE 3906, Dimes, YA of Toronto, and Dream Team. May I introduce Henry?
Great. Thank you, Emily, for welcoming me. I'm really glad to be here. And just get up the screen as well so I can see PowerPoint. I'll start off by thanking Hong Fook for inviting me here today, and also to say thank you to you for choosing to spend your time this way. I'm looking forward to what we have here. Having worked with a couple of organizations that serve newcomers and refugees, Wood Green Community Services in Toronto, as well as another agency in England, I have a lot of admiration and respect for the work that you're doing, and I have some appreciation for some challenges that you might face, some of the stress that you might face as well. And I'm not used to both presenting and also looking at the screen, but I'm just going to try and keep with that and the chat. That's we're using the chat today because people they might have some problems hearing me and such. So I'm going to try to be looking for that. My intention today is very simple. My intention is that I want you to be empowered, more empowered to be able to take care of yourself, more empowered to increase a sense of well-being in your life. How that might relate to things such as stress, burnout, and also compassion fatigue. Skills for today are very simple. I think that by the end of our time together, you'll get a sense of where to look for in terms of warning signs. I'd like you to have some practice in acknowledging with compassion how you are affected by some of these things that may be happening, some of these experiences that you might be having at work. And lastly, I'd like you to be able to tap into your own inner and outer resources to come up with supportive actions. I'd like to do this is I'd like to start by just giving a really simple introduction to stress, burnout, and compassion fatigue, to talk a little bit about some of the signs of these things. And we're going to spend most of our time driving what self-care process. I want you to use your experience to look at, one, what's happening, what's going on, two, how does that impact you, and now what? How are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? And then I have some list of resources, and we're going to go for a summary. Going to go for the overview. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're going to be covering. And so this is not going to be me telling you what to do. There's lots of opportunities to consider self-care. You could eat better, do exercise, get more rest, lots of things that you could do. And these are all valuable things. What I want to focus on is how we can use this process to tailor what's your response to your needs, your unmet needs. So it's going to be interactive in that way. I'm going to start by talking just a little bit about stress. For me, this is just a very simple definition or explanation. Stress refers to our reaction, or what's the impact on us in terms of some work-related demand over a short period of time or over a discrete period of time. It could be psychological, it could be physical, maybe increased heart rate or sweating. It could be behavioral. What I want to do is I want to distinguish between stressors, those things that affect us, and stress, which would be our response to that. And response can differ depending on how we are, depending on how we're able to cope with things and such. And distinguish this a little bit different from burnout. Burnout, for me, is more of a chronic strain that develops over time in response to high stress. And so it has some different dimensions: emotional exhaustion, more of a detached, cynical view of one's work, and a reduced personal sense of accomplishment, low sense of achievement, a low sense of effectiveness and such. To talk about stress and burnout, I'm going to identify 4 main areas that you can look, see if there might be some warning signs. So one is physical symptoms. So that include exhaustion or feeling physically worn out, Connected. Okay. So it seems like the sound be going through. So people can hear. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm wondering if there's anything I can do. Does it just right? So I'm going to continue. Thank you, David. Hopefully things will work out well from here. So we talked about stress, and that was a bit stressful. I have to admit, it affected me in terms of my stomach and also some of my thoughts. We also talked about burnout. The last one I cover is compassion fatigue. just talk a little bit about how this is something that comes that comes from caring and helping people who are traumatized or suffering. Often involves a preoccupation with that individual or his or her trauma, and it can happen, simply by being exposed to what the person has talked about or shared. And the compassion fatigue is secondary traumatic stress, and so it's an element of it. And, you can read this for yourself, but really, it's kind of being exposed to hearing about or knowing about people who've been in really extreme stressful situations. So I'm going to rush along a little bit now. I appreciate a hooray from someone who can now hear, because I want to spend most of our time test driving this process. I'm going to call this the what process for self-care. And if you can, it would be preferable if you could grab a piece of paper and divide into 4, like you see here. The top quarter labeled what's happening. The second quarter labeled so what, in terms of feelings. Third quarter, so what, needs. And the last would be now what. This is not critical, so if you don't have a piece of paper, we can still work with it, but it'll be easier if you have a piece of paper. So you could kind of graph you have, and then we'll kind of continue along. So dividing it into 4 this way. And the first part I'd like us to look at is what's happening. And in this top part here, I'm interested in us looking at what are the signs of stress, and also what are the stressors. So we're seeing an example of Irene, a caseworker, it's not her real name, who's been working at a small settlement agency for about 3 years. So Irene scans herself on physical symptoms, work performance, emotional reactions, and withdrawal behaviors. Irene notices 2 unusual and strong experiences. One is stomach upset, and a sense of dreading the possibility of new clients coming on board. Identifies some stressors related to this. The main ones being that there's a sense her agency is understaffed and covering a caseload for a colleague who's on sick leave right now. That's the consequence of being understaffed. And the other stressor is that the cases are getting more complex and time-consuming. Yeah. I'd like you, for your experience to work, I'd like you to write down in the what's happening section at the top any signs you have of stress or compassion fatigue. You start with what you're aware of, and then if you have time or if you have trouble figuring out, you can look in this list of physical symptoms, withdrawal behavior, emotional reactions, work performance, and possible signs of compassion fatigue as well. I know it's a lot of information. I wanted to list it here so that you can refer back to it later if you want. You can also list here in the top under what's happening any stressors. Just Irene identified stressors as being understaffed and cases getting more complex and consuming. What would be the stressors that are going on in your workplace? What's the stress? What are the stressors? So, have any questions about what I'm asking you to do? Look on that and see if there's anything here. Paper, you can just think about this in your mind and just recall what are some things that are stressful, what's happening for you. It might be a physical symptom, it might be something related to work performance, and the stressors. A sense of what might be causing or stimulating these things in you, what's going on at work in that way. Questions? I'm going to assume you stand. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to scan yourself, to scan your work life, and to come up with some stress and stressors. We all work at different speeds, and so 5 might be plenty for some of you, and for some others, you might not get done. So just the best you can in that time. Then when we come back, I'm going to invite people to share. I'm going to invite people to, and this is purely voluntary, so no one will be required or forced to share. Very interested to hear about some of the stresses and stressors that you folks are dealing with. Just going to wait a question about how we can make up the 20 minutes that was missed to the audio. I'm okay around that. I'm just shortening time on some things. So let's just take more minutes. I want a chance to identify what might be some stresses and stressors that you're going through. And in the time, I'm going to answer this question as well. Okay, so I'd love to hear from, and some of you might still be working, feel free to do that. I'd love to hear from some of you, though. What did you come up with, whether it was on the list that is in front of you or else otherwise? What are some stresses and stressors that came up with? Please type in the chat box, and if you type it in the chat box, I will read it out and share it. So hope to hear from at least 5 or 6 people. So I'm not going to name names. I'm just going to say the thing. Frequent headaches and gastrointestinal disturbances is one that was shared. Let's hear some others. I'm not going to name your name. So let's just go. What I'm experiencing, or maybe your coworkers are experiencing. Okay, so decreased satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment. One person noticed sleep habit changed. Another person reported feeling constantly tired. That's more. I'm not going to say your names. Elevated blood pressure. Okay, that's an important one. Oh, waking up in the middle of the night and thinking about work. I from one of the Hong Fook staff can relate to some of these as well. Okay. Any more before we move on? Okay. Dread going into work on a Monday. As another person mentioned, sleep disturbances, memory issues, headaches, feeling down, feeling underappreciated, most list. Okay. First, we haven't all the above. I shouldn't be laughing, but I just appreciate your honesty. Upset stomach. Okay, so thank you. There is more, but I'm just gonna move. Thank you. Upset stomach due to complex cases at work. Having identified what's happening, I'd like us to move on to so what. So what? And this would be an opportunity to begin to acknowledge about what's happening. How do we feel about it? Someone would go, for example, might go to so what. He scans the feelings list, which I'll give to you in a moment. So just hang on around that. And the first feeling that she notices that she can relate to that comes up is feeling disheartened. So Irene will take 3 breaths to just be with the disheartened feeling. She notices it in her chest area. So instead of it's not an intellectual exercise, I'd like us to honor and to be able to acknowledge how are we really feeling. So the first one is disheartened for her, and she just might take 3 breaths. And notice, what is it like to be with that feeling of disheartened? To scan this, she notices also frustration speaks to her. And so take 3 breaths to connect with frustration. And notices that seems to manifest more in her throat. So once again, 3 breaths to connect to her feeling of frustration, feeling frustrated. And the one that she notices that speaks to her the most is anxious. She's going to also take 3 breaths to connect to that twisted knot, anxious feeling in her gut. Yeah? Just in front of you, how do you feel when you look at what you wrote and what you remembered in the what's happening section, all those things that you previously wrote? I'd like you to scan this list. And for any feeling that speaks to you, there could very well be more than one. Give breaths to be with that. Could be tense, troubled, whatever it is. Take 3 breaths to be with that. Down in the feelings section, the so what feeling in the second box, and then move on and repeat the process. Scanning, breathing, writing. But what I'm asking you to do? The important thing about this is to take your time and to acknowledge. Some of you, it's a little bit rushed, but I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes to connect to each of the feelings, to honor it, to acknowledge it. A form of self-care, to just simply be present to ourselves and our body is telling us. So much of our work lives and our home lives and the rest of our lives, we're rushing from here to there, doing checklists, supporting other people. Simply being with how we feel, how our body is already a form of self-care. And if there's a feeling that's not on this list, feel free to include it. This list is not meant to be exhaustive. I'm just really interested in what might be some possibilities. How do you feel when you consider the stress and the stressors that are going on for you right now at work? The other thing I'd like to say is that there's no have to. So, we make choices sometimes about how much we allow ourselves to feel. And, asking you to be with whatever, being with discouraged, being with vulnerable, being with uncomfortable. And you're always at choice as well. One of the ways we protect ourselves is sometimes to separate and not allow ourselves to be as close to our feelings as we could be. And that's okay too. This for today. Some of you might still be connecting, and that's great. That's fine. We all work at different paces. And at the same time, I just want to kind of cover everything that I'd planned for today. So I'd love to hear from some of you. What did you come up with? What feelings connected with you? Was on the list or not? How are you right now? And I'm going to share, but I won't say the name. So just whatever you type in, I will cover much of it as I can. So I'd love to hear from at least 10 feelings. What did you come up with? Okay, so couple, pointed, angry, ashamed, and there's no right or wrong answer. This is how you are in your body. No need to be ashamed about feeling ashamed, for example. Upset. What else do people come up with in terms of what's going on for you? Discouraged. We have guilty and hopeless. One wrote kind of a sense of second-guessing themselves. And someone has shared about feeling overwhelmed and annoyed. And disheartened, tense, pressured. Someone really relate to the sad ones and the mad ones. I also have, I'm not going to read all of them, but some of the ones that I think haven't been mentioned, irritation, cautious as well. Okay, so a bit of a lump in the throat, so also sensing where it is in the body. And some more about overwhelmed and discouraged. Thank you for that openness, that vulnerability to even just listen to yourself and also to share a bit of that in the chat as well. This is part of so what. So things are happening, what's happening, so what, how am I impacted in terms of how am I feeling? And related to that, so what in terms of needs. So here is an opportunity for us to acknowledge the unmet needs in what's happening. For example, Irene goes further. She had written down disheartened, frustrated, and anxious. And she's going to scan the needs list, which I'll give to you in a moment. And along that list, the first one that spoke to her was support. Yeah. So what speaks to her? Support. Here she takes 3 breaths to connect to the business and the wonderfulness of support. She connects to this is what it matters to her. This is what is important in this situation. So she takes 3 breaths to connect to the beauty of support. Support. And to the beauty of it could be to imagine a time in your life when you really had a lot of support. Or maybe imagine someone in your life who offers you a lot of support. Whatever way help you into the vitality or the energy of support. Taking her 3 breaths, I write down support below disheartened, because for her there's a relationship, there's a link. She's feeling disheartened because it's support that matters to her. And the list, and the next thing that comes to her is contribution. List 3 to connect to the beauty and the wonder of contribution. How special it is to be able to make a contribution. How special it is to be able to contribute. She writes it underneath the feeling that it relates to, which is anxious. So for her, she's feeling anxious because contribution matters. Contribution is important. Same process. Scan 3, write 4, acknowledgement, which is under frustrated, because that is a link for her on that. For you, it might be different. For you, you might choose acknowledgement, and for you, you might be feeling sad. There's not necessarily a direct link. It just depends on each person. And the last one that spoke to her was hope. So that was a need that spoke to her. So considering what you wrote down in the What's Happening section, stress and the stressors, I'd like you now to scan through this list some basic needs we share. And for each need that applies to you, take 3 breaths to acknowledge how precious or how vital it is. Underneath the feel that most links to that for you, and that could be very different for each of us. So write each section, but underneath the feeling that most relates, keep scanning. Do as you have that relates or that I give you time for, and then take 3 breaths for each. Questions about what I'm asking you to do next? To our next. Questions? So I'm going to give you 5 or 6 minutes to do this. Take a look and see what speaks to you. Don't think about it too much. Oftentimes, just whatever jumps out at you or that kind of grabs you, go with that. Don't analyze it and think, oh, why is that? Or, no, it can't be that. Or maybe this. Don't overthink it. Just go what grabs you. come to a need that speaks to you, I'd like you to find your own way or do your best to connect to the beauty of it. The part of this from acknowledging more deeply than just simply saying the word and moving on, or just simply saying, yeah, that's it. So this is a part of our deeper lives, an opportunity to speak to us. The resources that we need for well-being. Each of these is one way of our body's way of letting us know, our being's way of letting us know that something important matters here. For that. Take another minute, and we'll come back together. And I'm very interested in hearing. So, another minute to go. So, I'd love to hear from as many of you as we have time for, and I'd be interested in the link. So, thank you. One person shared assurance. I'm going to hear just a need, but I'm also interested to hear if you may have connected it. So, for example, feeling scared because of a need for reassurance, or feeling lonely and because of a need for connection, or something like that. So I'm happy to take just the needs as well. But if you want to share the feeling and the need that you linked, that's fine as well. So we have some others: money, love, peace, passion, pleasure, and honesty. Another person shared shared purpose and meaning. Another about learning, an important need. Some was feeling hesitant because the need for trust mattered to them. Another person, interesting, feeling excited because the need for vision is important. I'll see one on passion. Another person was feeling agitated because of the need for cooperation. Person finding it hard to relax because to them is harmony. What they're seeing is harmony, I'm guessing. A person feeling fear because what they value is self-empowerment and self-respect. Thank you much for this. It's not as easy to share more about ourselves, and I really appreciate getting to this. And for me, part of the value of this is that we have a sense that we're not alone, that there are others, who are also having some challenges and maybe having some of the similar experiences. Feeling because of a need for safety, feeling frustrated because autonomy is something that is feeling overwhelmed because they value order. And the last key right now is someone who's experiencing some discontent because they really have a need for self-expression. So and just I'm interested in, thank you for sharing the what you came up with. I'd also like to make some space if anyone wants to share anything about so it comes up for you when you acknowledge those things. We talked about cooperation, harmony, self-respect, safety, order. So when you went through this process that I asked you to do for some basic needs that we shared, for you, what do you take away? Were you touched by anything that you learned? I'd like to hear from some people about that. Any of the things or anything else you might want to share in this this part. Okay, so the things here. One person writes, I feel like I'm slowly getting back on track. Just kind of acknowledging the need to let go of something and to move on from that. A particular answer, but what do you take away? Another person writes, misery loves company. It's good to know you aren't the only one. And here's someone shared, went below the surface to see other layers of what's going on. Another, I feel better just doing this analysis. It's like a weight has been lifted. And self-shared, knowing triggers, seeing a bit of a sense of, what's happening that's affecting this person, but also, kind of like, what that might bring up in terms of feelings and unmet needs in this case. Okay. So sometimes this can be quite enough. This is a form of self-care to just acknowledge. And I'm going to just go to the next part to kind of wrap this up before we move on. So I'd like each of you to make a self-empathy statement to yourself. You could do this for every need that you identified. I'm only going to give you a limited amount of time for today, so at the very least do one. And this is a form I'm inviting you to try. Here I feel, and you're feeling word there. It's because, put it there, is really important. So, for example, for Irene's situation, she might think or say out loud to herself, no wonder I feel disheartened. Support is important. I'd like you to try at least one of these for what you came up with. Wonder I feel it's because is important. So you can say loud, or if you don't feel, if you're in a room with other people, say that yourself. But just give that empathy statement to yourself. Okay. Share about what that's like. What's it like just to kind of make this kind of a summary statement, a wrap up? You can either share your statement, and there's one here I'm going to share in a moment. Or the effect of that. What's it like when you kind of acknowledge that for yourself in this form? So we have disappointed. It's the effectiveness is really important to me. Self-empathy statements you want to share, or I'd also be interested in hearing what's the impact of kind of summarizing this for yourself. Here's where I feel shocked. It's because honesty is important. Yep. And here's someone who's sharing about, them is kind of relates to being stressed, and teamwork is something I'm sensing is matters to them. So is sharing here about by summarizing it, it gives the opportunity to be self-compassionate. Yeah, I think that is a way of describing it. This is kind of a summary statement or a self-empathy statement. And real essence of it is about treating yourself with some compassion in that way. Another put, no wonder I feel overwhelmed. It's because work balance is really important to me. Another husband is sharing here. This is a great exercise that made us see what's really inside of me. It's a lot. In these two levels. I mean, one level is what's happening on the outside. It may be, we're understaffed. It may be I'm feeling it may be an knot in my stomach. And then another level, what's the impact on that? Maybe when I sense that knot in my stomach, I realize, wow, I feel really worried. And it's because health is important to me, or I feel really worried. It's because inner peace is important to me. So there's other level in terms of the impact on us. Okay, and the last thing someone has shared is saying about if this gives permission for the feelings. And to, even though most or almost all these feelings are, I would call them unpleasant feelings. They could be shocked, stressed, disappointed, overwhelmed. For example, they're not pleasant feelings, but that doesn't make them wrong. Right? And I think it would be a mistake to deny them. This gives some permission, or that it's okay for us. In fact, these feelings are actually our body's way of letting us know that something matters, something important is not being addressed. Just like if you're driving a car and you see a yellow light suddenly start blinking on your dashboard, it's your car's way of letting you know that something needs attention. Even if you're not quite sure exactly, you're very knowledgeable like me about cars, you might not be exactly sure what it is, but I am smart enough to know that something requires attention, and it's not to keep driving with light on for too long. Okay. Sometimes this self-compassion, sometimes this acknowledgement, sometimes giving permission to the feelings and the needs is enough. Sometimes that can be the self-care ready to move on. Sometimes we may also want to take some action to follow up from that. And so that's the last step on your page, the bottom section of your page now. Now what? And so what is really all about making requests. It could be about making requests to yourself or another person. And the purpose of it is to one step toward creating more well-being. The request doesn't have to solve the whole issue. It doesn't. It just anything that moves you towards meeting an unmet need in some way. It could involve asking for help or collaboration. If you're not sure about a resource, you can ask, and that can be the one-step request. Highlight a few features of a request to make it more likely to happen and also more likely to be successful. So first of all, request is always linked to a need. Before we jump to action, one of the sayings that I like a lot is connection before solution. So can we connect to what matters to us in terms of our core human needs that are motivating us, perhaps ones that are unmet, before we jump to action or solution? So what is it that we're trying to meet? It has to go one step towards solving that. So it could be, just asking someone to meet with us next Friday to talk about the issue. And it involves a person who, a doable action, when, for how long. And so if someone says, "Oh, I'd like to make a request to myself, I want to eat healthier," I would say that's not specific enough to kind of make it tangible. So what would eat healthier mean for you? Would it mean I'd like to eat at least 3 salads a week? Does it mean I'd like to I'm just trying to think. I have a borderline high blood sugar, so it might mean I'm going to choose fruit for dessert instead of cheesecake. What specifically might I do that would be eating healthier? And just sometimes people say, I'm going to relax. That's also not specific enough. What does that mean? Does that mean I'm going to make sure that I have half an hour of walking each day? Does it mean I'm going to make time to spend with my partner to watch Netflix on a Friday night instead of working? What does that mean to relax? And the last thing about requests is it's done with the awareness that any request is just one of many, many, many possible ways to meet a need. So at work, you can switch to another. If something of yourself or someone else and it doesn't get accomplished or cooperated with, then there's other options. If you to connect and to relax is to watch Netflix with your partner, and the internet goes down and you're not available to, Netflix is not available, then maybe you could do something else. So there's lots of possibilities that way. I'm going to want to stick to Irene's example. So what's happening? Stomach upset, dreading new clients, coverage load for the colleagues, on sick leave because they're understaffed, cases are getting more complex and time-consuming. feel? Feels disheartened and anxious. What giving rise to these feelings? There's need for support, acknowledgement, confidence, and hope. For the sake of time, to demonstrate, but say around support. Brainstorm now, if that's one that she wants to work on, in terms of a need that she'd like to try to meet better. And so here's some places or some ways that she could work on that. So now what? Making requests. First of all, she could make a request at work. She could make a request to herself at work, and that might be for her to the park 3 times a week for lunch and chew each bite 25 times before swallowing. Because someone like me, when she's stressed, she just wolfs down her lunch, and that's really not very very healthy or caring for her. And that she could ask a request is to someone else at work, anybody else. It could be, in this case, her coworker Shen Fan, to meet at 4 o'clock on Friday to learn about how Shen Fan handles clients, because Shen Fan seems to be able to handle more clients, still be less stressed than Venus. So hey, what can I learn from Shen Fan? She could also make requests outside of work that's related to support. So, for example, she could make a request to herself to spend Saturday afternoon researching inspiring professional development trainings. Possible something related to case management. And the last area that she could look for making requests is she could request outside of work to another person. Now, it all ties back to support. How can she bring more support into her life? How can she fill her tank, her support tank, to make it more full? So, for example, she could, to another person outside of work, say, hey, another idea is I could call my former classmates, Asa and Mohammed. I really got along with them and I respect them. And I could ask them about forming a peer support group related to work, because they're both also still work in the same field that I do. Yeah. So the goal here is just to come up with as many, kind of brainstorming. So what are as many different requests we could make of myself, to her, at work, outside of work, that could meet this need for support. I'm going to ask you to try. Before I do, I'd like to just see if people have any questions about what I'm asking you to do. And just in the chat box here. If you have any questions about what I'm asking, I'd like you, for your situation, to choose one of the needs and come up with as many requests as possible, preferably one to yourself, to another, preferably one at work, some at work, and some outside of work as well. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So, give you, this tends to take a little bit more time, so I'm going to give you about 8 minutes for this. So, bring the request. You're just one step towards bringing some more requests into your life, and be aware that there are many, many ways that you can meet that need. Go. Storm, I want to emphasize um, for you to be daring, not committing to doing any of these. Um, so consider some different possibilities. An opportunity to tap into your resourcefulness and the resourcefulness around you. Um, be creative, be daring. Questions or want some coaching? Feel free to write in the chat box. I'm trying to touch what's possible with a webinar and more interactive. So feel free to do that. So let's 2 more minutes to complete this part. If you finish early, you could also experiment with choosing another need. And again, see if you come up with some requests. And if you haven't come up with, I urge you to try and see if you can do at least one for each of the 4. To yourself at work, to another at work, to yourself outside of work, to another at work. So you're welcome to continue brainstorming and thinking of requests. And at the same time, I'm going to invite some people to share. I'd be interested in if you could share 2 parts. What's the need and the request? So a request always flows from meeting at least one or more needs. If you're willing to, if you could include the need as well. So, for example, Irene would be the need for support, and then I'm going to go to the park 3 times a week, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, please type in. I'd be really interested to hear what you came up with. And this last part, you could wrap it up by choosing one or more actions to take now. What would you do? So this part here is a brainstorm, and then you could finish it off by then saying, okay, well, I come up with these 5 things, and 1 or 2 that I'd most like to do are this. Okay, here we go. One person talked about taking 5 minutes in a day just to have silence or to listen to music. Another to keep their phone on receiving messages at lunch, so that it's possible to have lunch and not is to exercise at least 3 times a week. Another is to take part in a group activity, which is not work-related. So another here is the need to take time for myself. Here I would maybe tweak it a bit if you're open to getting some feedback. To mention a time of the week. So, for example, I'd like to take time for myself immediately after work on Friday or Saturday morning. And maybe even just what that might mean for you. That might be go for a walk at the beach. It could be, for another person, taking time for themselves might be going to a movie. It could be sitting and meditating in a Buddhist style. Everybody's different. Thank you so much with a smiley. Here's also another example. This person need for order, and them, how they might make that possible, the request, I'm guessing to themselves, is to have a clean desk and a home area as well. Another person request they came up with is to talk to a friend, to check in. So we're tapping into resourcefulness. It's not just all about on us. They can talk to a friend, for example. Effectiveness. Someone wrote, be clear about next steps. Make a list of priorities. Yeah. So you don't have to solve everything. I mean, maybe this might be in the service of something else, or it might be of itself. But an option would be just to say, what's next? You know, what are my top 5 priorities, and in what order? And then can also be a bridge towards something else that you're looking for as well in terms of effectiveness. Thanks for the ideas. Okay, so empowerment. So this is a request to themselves, reframe the negative, distorted thinking, to call past successes. Yes, very tangible. So I might, think, what are 3 things that I've been really happy about or satisfied with that have happened in the last year that I've been responsible for, or what's another way of looking at this that's different from I'll never be able to fix this, or it's overwhelming and there's just not enough, which might be a negative thinking, for example. I'm really enjoying these. If you'd be willing to share what you came up with in terms of from your need, what was the need that you're working with, and what are some requests that could be of yourself or others at work or outside of work. So I'm gonna move on. So I want to summarize this by kind of looking a little bit at the process. So really the 4 steps: what's happening, and stressors are affecting me, how do I feel about that, what's my body's way of letting me know there's a problem, what's like the yellow blinking light on the dashboard, and behind the feelings, what is it that really matters to me? A person might feel sad, and it might be because of a need for effectiveness. A person might also feel sad, and it might be about a need for progress, and a third person, it might be for a need for order. So the feelings don't tell us everything. It's really helpful to look deeper to the needs, and choose to, if that self-compassion is not sufficient, we could move on to making a request. What request that I could make? That today we've been focusing a little bit more on kind of individual dimension, and that would include mental or physical coping techniques or lifestyle changes, such as exercising. I just want to acknowledge that there's also organizational and systemic factors as well. So dealing with stress and stressors in our organization, that might involve redesigning a job, more flexible working conditions, doing a stress audit, having support for professional development, maybe training or clinical supervision, and simply, even broader than that, to try to address the challenge that we face that might involve addressing workloads, organizational funding, professional development, having fair and adequate remuneration and rewards for what people do. I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but there's 2 resources that I found quite interesting that might be of interest to you. The POQOL is a measure, which could be a more detailed way to look a little bit at how stress and burnout and fatigue might be for you. Then there's also this internet resource on stress and burnout that I like because it addresses the individual, organizational, and systemic dimensions as well. I'm not going to read it, but I just wanted to acknowledge the sources of where all the information that I got came from. So this is available to you. And I'll just say in summary is this. I want you to know that you can use this process, the what process for self-care. What's going on? Stress and stressors? What? How does it affect me in terms of feelings and needs? And now what? Do I want to do about it? What can I ask others to do about it as a way of increasing well-being? I'll definitely end the webinar here. Stay on a little bit longer if anybody wants to chat or whatever. Yeah, thank you for test driving this with me. And if you have any questions, we can now or feedback. Also, at the end of this webinar, there will be a survey pop up, and I'd really appreciate it. We'd really appreciate it if you could do the survey to let us know what worked, and also any room for improvement as well. I want to know both. Yeah, so normal end. I'm going to run some of these things, and just will consider to be post-webinar now. Thank you for this training. I learned a lot and would like to have a copy of the PowerPoint and record if possible. So Hong Fook will make that available to you. Thank you very much. This is very helpful. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you and thank you. Thank you so much. It was very helpful, not only on a personal level, but as a helping professional. Thanks for the present. A lot of people want the PowerPoint, so we can certainly make that available to you, I believe. Maria, is that? Yeah, okay. Do you have a few questions about Connect? Sorry, it's checking here, but yeah, stay on if you want for a little bit. If you have any questions about connection of my needs and support, great presentation. Like the copy of the PowerPoint. Okay, yeah. So somebody. So this is the post-webinar discussion now. So we have a few minutes. Somebody said, I do have a few questions about the connection of my needs and support. Would you like to kind of have a little bit of interaction around that now, or would you like to maybe we could talk about offline time? Could you let me know what you'd like? And if it's offline, then how could I reach you? The request is to cover that offline, so that's fine. Here's everyone's welcome to this, not just you. Why don't we talk to me afterwards? If you, my number is or we can set up a time. So it's up to you. You can call me in 3 minutes, or you can set up a time by contacting me by email. Copy of the okay. So we have a question here. If the organization has no hope of providing you with any support, what request can you do then? Okay. Wow. So I think first thing I would do in that situation is I would go back to acknowledging the feeling. I might be feeling, wow, despair, maybe angry, maybe hope. So first of all, I just want to, Control Alt Delete. Now I don't even have the password. So what? I can read. Can we get on? Anyway, if you can still hear me, is it, if you can hear me, can you log me in? Okay, I'm not sure if you can still hear me, but we're just going to get me logged back on, and hope that's, oh, okay, I'm back. Okay, still hear me, great. Yeah, so first of all, I would go back to that, and just acknowledge, wow, I'm really angry about this, or wow, I'm really in despair. No wonder I'm in despair. I really need support. I really am seeking support. So we can go with that as a start. And to me, still, things, I mentioned 4 areas, so we could still look at what are requests that I could make of myself. I have full power over myself. So what can I give myself that to have at work even that would bring me some measure of support? And then the other two options, if you really believe that the organization will provide you with zero, is to look to what are requests you can make of yourself outside of work. What are some requests you can make of another person outside of work that could bring some more support into your life in some way? Interested in looking at those things in terms of resourcefulness as well. I would also gently challenge you around the organization has no hope of providing you with support. What I mean by gently challenge you is that another option might be to, just as one step, you could ask a coworker, maybe someone who does feel more hopeful, if they might see another way, for example. So my point is not to disagree with what you're saying, but more just, is there resourcefulness that you can tap into that maybe you hadn't thought about, or maybe that your perspective that the organization has no hope of providing you with resources might be limiting you. Okay, so let's leave it there. You have an email. You're very welcome. You have my email. You have my phone number if you want to follow up. And please, everyone, if you can do the survey, it's significant, and I will definitely take a look at it. Okay.